Thomas Jefferson learn English through historical stories about U.S. presidents. Improve English. The story consists of 3 parts. Part 1, The Philosopher of Liberty. Part 2, President of Principle. Part 3, Legacy on the Hill. If you found this video meaningful, please support the channel by giving it a like, subscribing, sharing with your friends. And don't forget to leave a comment below. Every little action from you is a big motivation for me to keep creating more valuable and heartfelt videos. Thank you very much. Part 1, The Philosopher of Liberty. Story, Format, Presentation. Chapter 1, The Quiet Son of Virginia. It began in the hills of Virginia, where the air carried the scent of tobacco and revolution. On April 13th, 1743, in a modest plantation house called Shadwell, Thomas Jefferson was born into a world on the cusp of dramatic change. His father, Peter Jefferson, was a skilled surveyor and planter. Known for his rugged intelligence and independence, his mother, Jane Randolph, belonged to one of the most prominent families in Virginia. As a child, Thomas was not loud, nor did he seek the company of many. He preferred books to games, music to quarrels, and solitude to celebration. He learned Latin and Greek before the most boys his age could ride a horse. He read Plutarch, Cicero, Locke, and Newton by candlelight. He played the violin in the quiet hours and scribbled notes on the philosophy before sleep. His early years were shaped by loss. When his father died in 1757, Jefferson was just young. It was a formative blow, but it gave him an urgent sense of responsibility. He inherited land, people, and expectation, and he bore it with quiet resolve. Chapter 2, Education, Enlightenment, and Ethical Roots. At 16, Jefferson entered the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg. The young man who arrived on campus was already a formidable thinker, but under the mentorship of Professor William Small and legal scholar George Wythe, he became something rarer, a philosopher with a purpose. He devoured books studying law, science, ethics, architecture, and ancient history. But it wasn't knowledge for its own sake. Jefferson believed ideas were tools, and his education was preparation for service. He lived simply, walked daily, played the violin at twilight, and debated liberty in candle-lit chambers. By his early 20s, he had built a foundation of beliefs that would guide him through revolution and governance. He believed in reason over tradition, education over ignorance, and, above all, liberty over tyranny. Chapter 3, Into the Law and the Fire of Revolution. Jefferson became a lawyer in 1767, practicing quietly but effectively across Virginia. He was no showman in the courtroom, but his logic was razor sharp. He believed the law should uplift people, not oppress them. But colonial law, tied to British rule, often did the latter. As tensions between the colonies and the Crown grew, Jefferson's voice rose. In 1774, he wrote a summary view of the rights of British America, arguing that the colonies were independent partners in the British Empire, not subjects. The pamphlet spread widely. Suddenly, Jefferson, once the quiet scholar, had become a radical thinker. Chapter 4, The Pen of Independence. In 1776, at the age of 33, Jefferson was selected to draft the Declaration of Independence. Others could speak better, but no one could write as he could. He rented a small room in Philadelphia and, with quill in hand, began. His words were bold, poetic, and dangerous. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Those lines, born of Enlightenment thought and personal conviction, would ignite a revolution and echo through centuries. Though Congress edited his draft, Jefferson's voice remained. The Declaration became a national scripture. Jefferson, a man of books and solitude, had become a founding prophet of freedom. Chapter 5, Governor, reformer, and the trial of war. Following independence, Jefferson served as Virginia's governor from 1779 to 1781. He enacted reforms, separating church and state, modernizing inheritance laws, and founding the future University of Virginia. But his governorship was marred by the chaos of war. When British troops invaded Virginia, Jefferson fled Richmond. Though his actions were strategic, critics called it cowardice. He did not defend himself publicly, but in his heart, the failure stung deeply. Retreating to Monticello, his hilltop home, Jefferson buried himself in books and architecture. But peace did not last. In 1785, he was called to serve again, this time as America's minister to France. Chapter 6. Paris, Light and Shadows. In France, Jefferson found inspiration and warning. He admired French art, intellect, and Republican spirit. He met scientists, writers, and revolutionaries. He walked among philosophers in the salons and diplomats in the courts. But he also saw a country on the brink. When the French Revolution turned violent, Jefferson supported the ideals, but warned of passion without principle. He lost his youngest daughter, Lucy, while in Paris. The grief was profound. He poured himself into public service, but never fully healed. He returned home in 1789 with new ideas and heavy burdens. Chapter 7. The Cabinet Clash. Back in America, Jefferson was appointed the first Secretary of State under President George Washington. He entered a divided cabinet. His old friend, Alexander Hamilton, now Treasury Secretary, envisioned a strong central government and industrial economy. Jefferson, by contrast, dreamed of agrarian simplicity and individual liberty. Their conflict wasn't just political, it was philosophical. Jefferson feared concentrated power. He believed a national bank and standing army could endanger freedom. Hamilton believed structure and strength were necessary to survive in a dangerous world. Their rivalry birthed America's first political parties. Jefferson's Democratic Republicans versus Hamilton's Federalists. Chapter 8. A Resignation and a Return. Frustrated by infighting and exhausted by conflict, Jefferson resigned from the cabinet in 1793. He returned to Monticello to tend to his gardens, build inventions, and recover peace of mind. But peace was elusive. The political climate turned harsh. Newspapers attacked his ideas. His reputation became a battleground. Yet Jefferson did not retreat forever. In 1796, he ran for president and came in second, becoming vice president under John Adams. It was an awkward pairing, but Jefferson remained loyal to the system. He believed the republic could mature, even through tension. He waited. He watched. And he prepared. Part 2. President of Principle. Chapter 1. A bitter election, a peaceful victory. The election of 1800 was unlike any before it. It was loud, passionate, and bruising. The Federalists, led by incumbent President John Adams, warned that a Jefferson victory would plunge the nation into chaos and atheism. Jefferson's Democratic Republicans countered that Adams's policies betrayed the very liberty the Revolution had secured. It was democracy's first real test. And it came down to a tie. Jefferson and his running mate, Aaron Burr, received an equal number of electoral votes. For days, the decision fell to the House of Representatives. Behind closed doors, deals were whispered, threats were made, and the nation waited. On the fifth ballot, Jefferson was chosen. It could have torn the country apart, but it didn't. Instead, Jefferson's peaceful transition of power set a precedent, one that would define America. He called it the Revolution of 1800, not because of bloodshed, but because the Republic had changed direction without violence. Power had passed from one ideology to another by vote, not by sword. In his inaugural address, Jefferson reached out to opponents. We are all Republicans. We are all Federalists. Chapter 2, The People's President. Jefferson's presidency began with symbolism. He walked to his inauguration rather than ride in a carriage. He answered the White House door himself. He dressed plainly, refused titles, and cut extravagant ceremonies. But beneath the humility was a laser-focused mind. Jefferson reduced the national debt, eliminated internal taxes, and shrank the military. He believed a free people should not be burdened by a bloated government. He also targeted the controversial Alien and Sedition Acts passed by the Federalists. These laws had allowed the government to imprison critics. Jefferson let them expire, pardoned those convicted, and reaffirmed the First Amendment's promise of free speech. But his greatest success, perhaps the most consequential action of his presidency, came from an unexpected offer. Chapter 3, The Louisiana Purchase. 1803, Napoleon Bonaparte offered to sell the entire Louisiana territory to the United States. France needed money for war. Jefferson needed land for a growing republic. For $15 million, the United States doubled in size. Jefferson had long championed a strict interpretation of the Constitution, and the Constitution did not explicitly allow for buying foreign territory. But the opportunity was too important. With the stroke of a pen, he secured land from the Mississippi to the Rockies. This purchase opened the door for westward expansion, and with it, dreams of exploration and prosperity. But also new questions about slavery, indigenous lands, and national identity. Chapter 4, The Quest for the West. After the Louisiana Purchase, Jefferson launched one of the most ambitious journeys in American history, the Lewis and Clark Expedition. He instructed his former secretary, Meriwether Lewis, to lead a team across the uncharted territory. Their mission was scientific, diplomatic, and deeply patriotic. Explore the rivers, map the mountains, and reach the Pacific. The expedition lasted 2 years. It brought back thousands of specimens, maps, and invaluable knowledge of the land and its native peoples. Jefferson saw the frontier as a promise, a place where free citizens could live independently, away from the corruption of cities and empires. But that promise was not free from contradiction. Chapter 5, Slavery and Paradox. Jefferson wrote, "All men are created equal." Yet he owned over 600 enslaved people throughout his life. He called slavery a moral depravity, a hideous blot, and believed it threatened the Union's future. But he did not free most of the people he enslaved. He feared civil war, economic collapse, and social chaos if slavery were suddenly ended. He believed, perhaps too idealistically, that the future would resolve what the present could not. It remains the deepest contradiction of his legacy. A man who preached liberty while benefiting from bondage. And yet, even his harshest critics agree. Jefferson gave the nation a vocabulary of freedom. Words that others would later use to demand the liberty he failed to fully deliver. Chapter 6, Foreign Troubles. Jefferson's second term brought new challenges. Abroad, American ships were harassed by both Britain and France, locked in their own war. Pirates from North Africa's Barbary states demanded tribute for safe passage. Jefferson refused to pay. Instead, he sent the Navy, the first American president to do so. The First Barbary War ended with U.S. ships asserting their rights in the Mediterranean. But worse troubles loomed with Britain. Their Navy began impressing American sailors, forcing them into service. It was a humiliation Jefferson could not stop. In response, he signed the Embargo Act of 1807, halting all U.S. exports. He hoped economic pressure would force respect. It didn't. Instead, the embargo crippled American merchants, especially in New England. The economy suffered. Critics fumed. Jefferson, once a champion of small government, had used federal power in sweeping ways. By the end of his second term, Jefferson was tired, both politically and personally. Chapter 7, A Farewell to Power. In 1808, Jefferson refused a third term. He believed in rotation of leadership and the dangers of permanent power. He retired to Monticello, weary but proud. He had doubled the nation's size and promoted peace, expanded knowledge, and proved democracy could survive disagreement. As he left the capital, crowds gathered to cheer. Though his second term was clouded by controversy, Jefferson remained one of the most beloved leaders in American memory. His final words to the nation came in a letter. I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man. Part 3, Legacy on the Hill. Chapter 1, Monticello and the man. After stepping down from the presidency in 1809, Thomas Jefferson retreated to Monticello, his serene estate nestled in Virginia's Blue Ridge. Though he had once ruled the Republic, he returned not as a statesman, but as a scholar, inventor, architect, and farmer. The mountaintop home he had spent decades shaping became his sanctuary. His mind's canvas, his soul's refuge, Jefferson was not a man to retire into stillness. At dawn, he would stroll the gardens, noting the progress of his experimental crops. He invented new plows, studied weather patterns, and wrote endlessly. His fascination with nature, architecture, and classical learning never waned. To him, life after public service wasn't the end of duty. It was simply a different calling. Monticello was filled with contradictions. He spoke of liberty and natural rights, yet more than horse-or enslaved people lived and labored on his property. He once described slavery as a moral depravity and a threat to the nation, yet he remained financially dependent on the system. His relationship with Sally Hemings, an enslaved woman at Monticello, has sparked generations of study and reflection. As he aged, Jefferson's debts worsened. His generosity, years of underpaid service, and the economic disruptions of war left him struggling. Still, he refused to compromise his hospitality. Visitors were always welcome. To them, Jefferson offered wine, wisdom, and wide-ranging conversations, from the stars in the sky to the soil beneath their feet. Chapter 2, The Dream of a University. Jefferson often said that his greatest achievement wasn't the presidency, but founding the University of Virginia. In the early 1810s, he envisioned an institution unlike any other in America. It would be a place of free inquiry, secular values, and public service. Iculum, not out of hostility, but in defense of liberty of thought. He designed the campus himself. Inspired by classical architecture, he laid out a great lawn flanked by pavilions for each discipline, crowned by a domed rotunda based on the Roman Pantheon. He handpicked the books for the library, advocated for modern languages and sciences, and insisted that students govern themselves. The university opened in 1825 with Jefferson still writing detailed guidance. He believed deeply that education was the bedrock of Republican government. An educated citizenry is a vital requisite for our survival as a free people. Today, the University of Virginia still reflects that founding spirit. In its columns and courtyards live the values Jefferson hoped would outlast kings and empires. Chapter 3, The Letters of Legacy. Though age wore on his body, Jefferson's pen remained sharp. In his final years, he became a prolific letter writer. His favorite correspondent, John Adams, the very man he had once opposed with ferocity. Their reunion, through heartfelt letters starting in 1812, is one of history's great reconciliations. They wrote of politics, science, books, and memory. They joked, grieved, and compared aches and philosophies. Jefferson's letters from this era are among his wisest, reflective, witty, and rich with insight. "I cannot live without books," he once wrote, and his letters prove it. He saw the act of writing as civic duty, a way to pass ideas forward, challenge ignorance, and continue shaping the nation's future long after stepping away from power. He also advised younger leaders, James Madison, James Monroe, and countless others. His ideas on states' rights, federalism, education, and civil liberties remain part of the national conversation because Jefferson never truly stopped serving. Chapter 4, The Final Hour. By the mid-1820s, Jefferson's health began to fade. He endured arthritis, intestinal disorders, and immense pain. But he never complained loudly. He wrote, read, and oversaw Monticello's affairs for as long as his strength allowed. He grew preoccupied with the symbolism of dates. July 4th, the birth of the Declaration, was approaching its 50th anniversary. Jefferson was determined to live to see it. On the morning of July 4th, 1826, Thomas Jefferson stirred in bed and asked, "Is it the 4th?" Hours later, he passed away at Monticello. Unbelievably, that same day, his old friend and rival John Adams died in Massachusetts. Adams's final words: "Thomas Jefferson still survives." They didn't know, but the symmetry was extraordinary. 2 revolutionaries, 2 presidents, 2 friends. 2 friends, departing on the nation's 50th birthday as if scripted by Providence. Chapter 5, The Founder's Echo. Jefferson's physical life ended, but his voice echoes still. His words, etched in marble, printed in textbooks, invoked in protests and parades, remain foundational. He is quoted by presidents and protesters alike. His Declaration of Independence has inspired revolutionaries on every continent. His belief in liberty, reason, and democratic experiment has helped generations strive forward, and yet his contradictions remain. He left unfinished work on race, inequality, and justice. He planted seeds, some of which would take generations to bloom. He left behind Monticello, a living museum. He left behind a university. He left behind ideals that would shape centuries. And in a letter to Roger C. Waitman, written just days before his death, Jefferson reaffirmed his faith in the American spirit. All eyes are opened or opening to the rights of man, the spread of the light and liberty of the world. Epilogue. A republic, if we keep it. Thomas Jefferson's life was full of contradictions, but also greatness. He believed a republic depended on its people more than its rulers, that books were as powerful as armies, that minds must be free if men are to be free. Today, in classrooms, courtrooms, libraries, and town squares, we live among the questions he asked, and the challenges he never solved. Jefferson was not a saint, but he was a builder, a dreamer, a philosopher who laid a cornerstone of liberty upon which generations would build. To understand him is to understand America, not as a finished project, but as a work in progress. If you found this video meaningful, please support the channel by giving it a like, subscribing, sharing with your friends, and don't forget to leave a comment below. Every little action from you is a big motivation for me to keep creating more valuable and heartfelt videos. Thank you very much.